Welcome to the Total Soccer Show and our roundup of all the latest transfer news. So how's Liverpool's title defence spending spree shaping up? Will Arsenal ever land a number 9? Will Tottenham enforce enough to finish higher than 17th? And on the subject of bottom half sides, who's coming and going at Old Trafford? Woo! My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, someone who might not like the last line of that intro, Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
I take more umbrage with the Tottenham shot. They're in the Champions League, my friend. Things are going well for Spurs, and they are making a ton of smart signings, unlike that team in red that you mentioned, who made me go from enjoying a summer of soccer, even with the USMNT being the way they are, to once again remembering that Old Trafford is a place where you go to not have fun.
Yeah. From the reports I'm reading, Taylor, like Amrim's struggling to get people to show up. It's like optional...
I heard it the other way around. He's telling people, don't show up. You are welcome to show up to training after everyone has left. That is an amazing story, an amazing approach from the manager. No better way to generate value than to very clearly tell 5 players, nope, you go play by yourselves, train by yourselves. You are not welcome in training. But someone please give us $40 million for these guys. It's going to be great.
Amazing. Soccer heritage happening in Manchester right now. Can't wait to talk about that a little bit more. Joe Lowery's here. Hello, Joe.
Oh, what has it been? Maybe a month and a half since we've had a real Manchester United chat on this show. It's been blissful. It's been glorious. It's been like my own personal beach vacation. I am mourning its passing at this stage. You win some, you lose some, fellas.
Yeah. We're back to the Old Trafford grindstone, I'm afraid, Joe. But not for too much of this episode. There's plenty more to talk about besides
don't.
that team.
You just wait, Ryan. You just wait. We'll see.
Well, we'll see. Graham Ruthven's here. Hello, Graham. How are you?
I'm very well. Ryan Bailey, how are you? Resplendent in your new headwear. Is that a new addition?
Oh, it is. Thank you for noticing, Graham. If those watching on our YouTube channel, like and smash the subscribe, etc., will notice I've got a new Charlotte FC hat. I actually went to the Charlotte FC game on Wednesday evening and got something with a lightning bolt on the side. It's cool. Makes me feel like Lightning McQueen.
Is the lightning theme just to troll Chelsea and Enzo Maresca? That's the real reason for that whole design. Yeah. I
Come
love
on, you
it for that
inclement
reason.
weathers. That's what we chant at Charlotte.
Still better than the Poznan.
They're both up there. Before we get to all the transfer updates, patreon.com/Total Soccer Show is the best way to support this here endeavour. You'll get bonus episodes, bonus video, and access to our Discord server. All the cool kids are hanging out there at patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. Please and thank you. Graham Ruthven, how about we start our transfer sojourn for the day in Liverpool? What's going on there? They've already spent over 170 million sterling at this point. There's been approaches made for Alexander Isak for fairly astronomical figures. Hugo Ekitike as well from Eintracht Frankfurt seems to be on the radar. To paraphrase Joe Swanson from Family Guy when he saw Peter Griffin flying the Petercopter, how can they afford these things?
Well, they can afford it because they spent basically nothing last year, and they've got a lovely new Adidas kit deal coming into effect for the start of this season, and they've just expanded Anfield as well. So Liverpool have got money, and they're going to spend it. They've already spent a lot of it on Florian Wirtz, Premier League record signing, Milos Kerkez as well, 2 new fullbacks, the other one being Jeremy Frimpong coming into the club. And as you say, Ryan, on Tuesday, it was reported by David Ornstein, that Liverpool had made a formal approach to Newcastle for Alexander Isak. No bid at that stage, and Newcastle continued to insist that Isak isn't for sale. But there's a lot going on here, because just 24 hours before that, there had been a series of reports that Newcastle were in advanced discussions to sign Hugo Ekitike from Frankfurt. Those two deals seem to be linked in both directions, because Ornstein is also reporting today, just before we started recording, that Liverpool have advanced discussions with Frankfurt for Ekitike. So it feels like one of these clubs is going to end up with Isak and the other one is going to end up with Ekitike, and they just need to sort it out between them. Although, just to add even further, a further spanner to the works, Newcastle apparently like Johan Wissa as well from Brentford. So yeah, there's a lot going on here. My read on this is that this is 2 smart, well-run clubs knowing what they want. Josh Williams is an excellent Liverpool substacker who does loads of interesting tactics and stat stuff. And I saw him laying out a couple of days ago how, in terms of their skill set, Isak and Ekitike in particular are really, really similar. So you've got Newcastle protecting themselves against Isak leaving by potentially lining up his replacement, whether he goes this summer or next summer. even if Isak stays, he can play as like a second striker, or he can play as part of a front two, as he did with Omar Marmoush, so that would work in that situation. And then you've got Liverpool shooting their shot for their dream target in Isak, while also lining up a less expensive deal for a player who would give them something similar, and also it potentially puts on a bit of pressure on the club that they're trying to get the dream target from. So it's a fascinating bit of transfer market chess that kind of includes about 3 different clubs at this point.
And I think Newcastle are doing a really good job in the deliberate leak department. I feel like they've done a good job of getting out in front of some of these stories. I think when Liverpool first come in for Isak, there is the massive price tag quoted, and I feel like is an attempt there to just immediately be like, this is what we're going to ask for him. Someone's already interested. Anyone else who's interested, you're going to have to fork over a ton of money. At the same time, they're pursuing Ekitike, which I think is meant to be a potential replacement, is meant to be a potential accent to play alongside Isak, is what they've argued, and it feels like a good way to kind of immediately pacify supporters who might be frustrated about the possibility of Isak. And I've really enjoyed the kind of follow-up questions of how will they play together, and it seems like the resounding response from Newcastle has been like, they will, don't worry about it, we've got plans, it'll be fine, don't worry about it. So I like that they're sort of out front, I think, trying to get ahead of some of the stories and trying to control the narrative a little bit before it gets wrested away and they lose Alexander Isak somehow for 60 million or something like that.
Yeah. Joe, if the chips fall how we may expect here, are we terrified at how Liverpool are going to be in terms of how good they're going to be this coming season?
Well, in this case, is the chips falling how we expect just Liverpool signing one of these 2 players, right? Is that sort of what you're getting at? Yeah,
I mean, a 9-figure player, yeah, exactly.
It does seem like we're trending in that direction. I think Isak would be the slammiest dunk of all slam dunks. I mean, he is, to state the obvious, he's an incredible striker. I think to maybe go out a little bit stronger here, I think there's a real chance he's the 3rd best striker on the planet right now, behind Harry Kane and behind Erling Haaland. If you don't count Kylian Mbappe in that kind of pure number 9 role, Isak, with his ability to do so many different things well, he can slash him behind the back line, he can hold up the ball, he's dribbly, he ranges into the channels. He is so good and has put up really impressive numbers. The injury concern is maybe the biggest risk to go out and dropping a ton of cash on Isak. He would be a massive, massive deal for Liverpool. Ekitike is also a very, very good player and is someone who can, as Graham said, do some similar things to Isak. He can slash him behind. He is dribbly. I don't think he's quite as well developed physically, although he does show some strength, and we have seen some of that in the Bundesliga. And he's also just a little bit more raw across the board with some of his movement from the tape that I've watched of him in Germany. But both are excellent players, and this underscores everything around Liverpool right now. And Graham, I think, said it well, as far as these are 2 well-run clubs that are probably going to do something smart. Liverpool have been the best-run big club in Europe for years and years and years now. And Ryan, you opened this discussion with, how can they afford this, right? It feels like they shouldn't be able to. And the fact that they have been so diligent with managing their spending in the past, all the other things that Graham mentioned, of the big 6 clubs, they're spending the least over the last several transfer windows. They have managed their money so carefully. They've ignored so much of the noise when everybody around them is clamoring for them to do this, for them to do that. They have not done that. They've outsmarted the bigger budget teams, because Liverpool are not the biggest budget team in the Premier League. They're not one of the biggest budget teams in Europe. Yes, they have a bigger budget than most, but they've done such a good job of planning and facilitating their squad. It is hard to look at basically whatever striker signing they make this summer, whether it is Isak, seems unlikely at this point, frankly, or Ekitike. Both of those players are players that have the potential to be legitimate impact options for Liverpool up top, and they really do need that at the moment.
Yeah. Graham, we'll get to Arsenal shortly, but why aren't Arsenal in for these players as well? Or are they?
They've already spent 60 million on Martin Zubimendi, committed 50 million to Noni Madueke, and they're going to get Gyokeres for 60 million. So that did cross my mind. Had Arsenal known, and Joe's absolutely right, maybe Isak actually is going to be out of reach for Liverpool. And Arsenal will feel a little bit better about some of the business that they've done this summer. But if you'd presented them a scenario where they get Alexander Isak, who has been their dream option for 2 years, maybe even longer, that one player versus the business it looks like they're going to end up doing this summer, they might have taken Alexander Isak. So that's just the way the transfer market works. Sometimes it's about timing, it's about players being available at certain points of the window. And I think it's really interesting the way that things are panning out with Newcastle and Liverpool kind of dancing together around this group of players.
Graham, I know you're not in the financial know. I know you're not in the books of Arsenal, but the reported fee for Gyokeres is what, like around 64 million euros, I think, something like that, 55 million pounds. If you're Arsenal, what is the amount you'd be willing to pay over that to get Alexander Isak instead? Like, if you got one last call from Newcastle right before you're about to finalize this deal, and they're like, look, we're going to sell him to Liverpool for 100. If you give us 101, he's
before,
yours.
Taylor.
Yeah.
With Luis Suarez, we saw this movie
100 million and £1.
There you go. But so like, do you think that it is that slam dunk of a transfer that you would sort of forego a very good striker for potentially the third best striker in the world, according to Joe?
I think so. I mean, I might even go, this is potentially my boldest of bold takes. I know I joke about Erling Haaland's not being that good, and I'm sort of half joking. Alexander Isak is a better football player. Whether you're going to get and more goals out of him than Erling Haaland is another matter.
Everybody's a better football player than Erling Haaland, Graham, by your definition.
That is true. Yeah, including Victor Gyokeres.
Right.
But Isak is absolutely incredible. And the thought of him and Wirtz going to Liverpool, a Liverpool team that already strolled the Premier League title last season, I do think it changes. It would change perception of Liverpool, right? If they were able to get Isak and Wirtz done in the same window, and maybe they shouldn't care about that. But I've seen, that clip of Klopp a couple of seasons ago, basically having a not so thinly veiled, thanks Ryan, thinly veiled swipe at Man City, and he says something to the effect of like, well, we can't just go out and spend hundreds of £1 million on a single player. Like Liverpool, having spent £160 million on Wirtz in the market for Isak, who would cost over £120 million, like that does change the perception of them as a club. To get them in one window, it's almost like a sort of Premier League Galacticos. At the same time, those two players fit into what Liverpool want to do. And Moneyball, I think that term gets thrown around wildly and has done for the last 10 years. But let's just class what Liverpool do as Moneyball. Moneyball doesn't say you can't go out and spend big money on players.
Spent plenty.
Yeah, and Liverpool have done it. When at the time that they signed Virgil van Dijk, he's the most expensive defender in the world. At the time that they go out and get Alisson Becker, he's the most expensive goalkeeper in the world. So there is precedent for Liverpool to spend this sort of money, but to get the two of them in one window would be pretty seismic.
Well, and to go back, Taylor, to the question that you asked Graham about, how much more would you pay for Isak? My answer is like a lot. I would pay a lot of money for Isak. Certainly well into the, what would that be, nine figures? I can do math, easy math. And the real temptation with a player like Isak is that the risk is just so much less. Like, we'll talk more about Gyokeres and Arsenal in just a minute. But with a player like Isak, he's already done it. He's already done it in the best league in the world. He's proved himself to be a durable, effective 20-goal-a-season striker option with sustainable success, right? Not overperforming, not being way out over his skis in terms of XG. Like, he is being a reliable impact player for a very, very good team that's playing a lot of games across all competitions. The rigors of what he's done at Newcastle are effectively going to be the same as the rigors that he'll be asked to do at Liverpool. Again, I don't think this move is likely to happen based off of reading the tea leaves at this stage, but that's another reason why Isak is so attractive, is because every transfer has risk, right? It's Ian Graham, who was at Liverpool for a while. I don't believe he's there anymore. He talked about all the different ways that a transfer can fail, right? There can be injury problems, chemistry, tactical fit. There's like a dozen of them, right? We could rattle them off if we put our minds to it. We could just think about it. And with a player that's already in your league, who's played at that exact same level, the adaptation period is so much less. Like, I pay more for that because you're paying for a little bit of risk mitigation there, and that is one of the things, along with just the fact that Isak's a better player, I think, by like a notable distance. That's why I'd pay so much for him.
I mean, he would be worth a Premier League record transfer fee. Like, there's a little bit of a silly discussion, but I enjoy a silly discussion as much as the next person. Yeah, I'd pay 120 mil plus if I was Arsenal. If he's available, that's what I think he's worth to Arsenal. Because I think he's the sort of player who does truly move the needle and potentially wins them a Premier League title.
I definitely thought he was more injury prone than he is. I would have assumed he missed like 8 to 10 games last year. He started 34. He played 34 in the Premier League, 30 the season before that. So he is, to Joe's point, reliable and durable. And I think with the number of games Newcastle have this coming campaign will probably be pretty necessary for them. So I would assume that price tag will be considerably high if anybody does end up trying to lure him away. I also wanted to go back to the Liverpool point for a moment. If they're able to bring in some of those names that we were discussing to make some of the business happen that they're trying to, I also I don't think this is a motivating factor for them necessarily, but I think it is a good statement of intent at a time when they lose Trent Alexander-Arnold for free, and he has clearly been talked to in some form by Real Madrid in the period before he decides he's not going to renew and wants to kind of pursue that move. And I believe there were rumors this summer that Ibrahima Konate was considering a similar thing, that he was maybe going to let his contract run out and then move to Real Madrid next season. And I think if you're Liverpool, you know, like they are title challengers now in the Premier League. They're Champions League contenders. If you want a statement of intent and a reminder that, like, no, we're big spenders and we're a big club, making very big signings and making your team that much better and that much more solid is a very good way to do this. Because if they go out and sign another number 9, even if they sell Darwin Nunez, which I think is increasingly likely to happen and probably also explains how they're able to finance some of these moves, I think they still have depth and different options in that number 9 spot. So really, like, that one more signing gives them basically depth across the entire team. Because Graham didn't even mention their genius move to go for in all of their business. They brought in, trying to find it, Freddie Woodman. Everyone's favorite goalkeeper. We all know him, right? Yeah,
former Kilmarnock goalkeeper.
Yes. So even more depth than they already needed with Alisson and Mamardashvili.
Wonderful stuff. And with Newcastle, Graham, you know, if they get 125, 130 for Isak, obviously that's kind of cash down the back of the sofa for those guys. But presumably it does help them going forward quite a bit in their sort of quest to break into the top 4 on the regular.
Well, it is cash down the back of the sofa for them, and it isn't, because they've got PSR considerations, which is still the limiting factor for Newcastle. I have long made the argument, I don't know why you would sell Alexander Isak if you were Newcastle, because he is the sort of player, if we're talking about them becoming a team that can challenge and win the
He's how you
title,
do that.
He's the player that helps you do that, yeah. But I think they have been in discussion with him for a number of months over a new contract. And that's maybe linked to the fact that Newcastle are more open to offers now than they were in January or last summer, even, where they didn't even entertain the idea of Isak leaving. They have maybe got a sense that he is looking at his options. I think he's got, 2 years left on his contract, so it'd be like this summer or next summer. And by next summer, obviously, players got a year left on their contract, the value's going to go down at that point. So this might be when his stock is highest for a sale. But Newcastle at this point, I mean, they've rifled through sporting directors. They've gone through Dan Ashworth, they've gone through Paul Mitchell. So there's been upheaval behind the scenes for Newcastle. But they throughout that, they've remained a well-run, smart club. And so if they are going to pocket 120 million for Isak, I've got faith that they'll invest that pretty wisely.
Ooh, when smart club deals with smart club, who becomes the smartest? We shall find out very soon. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll take ourselves to North London to look at what Arsenal and Tottenham are doing in more detail. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our transfer update. Taylor, Victor Gyokeres. It feels like if you're an Arsenal fan, this name has been wafted at you for a good sort of 4 or 5 months at this point. And this does seem to be the saga of the summer, arguably. There's always one or two, isn't there, that get dragged out. We're hearing that Gyokeres is down tools and, trying to get this deal through on his own part, but what's the latest on this one? And then are we feeling bullish about it?
I didn't realize that this had reached saga territory. I feel like the Embuemo one is maybe the one that most dominates the saga headlines. For me, it's a smart signing and more smart business from Arsenal, who are themselves spending a good bit of money this summer. It also doesn't sound like even if they get this deal over the line, this will be the end of their spending. It seems like they are going to approach this season very much in a we are going to win now and win often mindset, and I think he definitely helps them do that. I think he is, if not the number 9, because it sounds like the consensus is Alexander Isak is the number 9 that they should be going for or should aspire to obtain. I think Gyokeres is a very good 60 million, 65 million pound replacement or 55 million pound replacement, and allows you to have a bit more financial flexibility. I think it makes a ton of sense, and I think it makes Arsenal much better. But I think everything they have done this season, if I can jump around for a moment, makes them much better. I think Madueke is a point that has been raised and mocked, as has the Kepa signing of Chelsea keep just basically tricking them into giving money away. But I think Madueke, he comes through the Chelsea situation and becomes a reliable player for them at a time when there is not a lot of reliability about Chelsea. And I think the flux in managers, the flux in who's in control, I think that he has some level of consistency there is to his credit, and there's just so many other options there. I think it doesn't mean that he's a bad player. He's not a malcontent or anything like it. I think it makes a ton of sense for Arsenal to bring him in and solidify their depth in that area. I think bringing in the 21-year-old Valencia center back Christian Mosquera, that seems like they're about to finalize that one as well. That gives them more options at center back, where it felt like if they lose one of their two, they are in trouble. I think to have somebody who can come in and deputize is very good for them. Kepa as goalkeeping depth and another goalkeeping option. Zubamendi gives them more steel through the middle. It just seems like Arsenal have seen what other clubs are doing, and maybe they were already targeting a good amount of strengthening, and now I think they put themselves into a position where before I really started reading about them, I was thinking like, oh, they're going to fall off a little bit. It's going to be a down season because Liverpool have gotten stronger, because City have gotten stronger, because Chelsea looks so strong. Instead, I feel like Arsenal very much in that conversation for me, and will be for the duration of the season.
Yeah, I think Madueke, just to pick up on him there, Taylor, I like Noni Madueke. I think he could be a good signing for Arsenal this season, but I reserve my judgment on him until the end of the window and I see what they do in the left wing, because Madueke is primarily a right winger that's played for Chelsea. He can play on the left side, so my read on that signing is they're bringing in someone to provide depth behind Bukayo Saka, because Arsenal have basically run him into the ground the last 3 seasons, and so they do need to ease the burden on him a little bit. But I keep banging this drum. I've been banging this drum, I think, for the last 18 months. The area of Arsenal's attack that looks to me the easiest part to upgrade is the left wing, where myself and I think Arsenal fans at this point are unconvinced by Gabriel Martinelli, who's had injury trouble and just isn't reliable in that sense. And then Leandro Trossard is a confusing player, where off the bench he seems able to make an impact, but as a starting player seems to disappear in games. And so I want to see what they do in that position. They had been linked with Nico Williams before he left everyone at the altar and signed a 10-year deal with Athletic Club. Barcelona absolutely delighted about that. Arsenal had been linked with him as well, and Chelsea had been linked with everyone, and Bayern. So I want to see what they do in that position. Rodrigo feels like the player. I haven't seen anything like solid, which is to mean I haven't seen David Ornstein reporting that Arsenal are in for Rodrigo, but that's the one that keeps swirling around, is that Rodrigo is available from Real Madrid this summer. Arsenal have a long-standing interest in him. I think he would be an incredible signing for Arsenal and would really upgrade the left side of their attack to the point that I think, especially if they're adding Gyokeres, that they're probably ready to win a Premier League title. But I want to see how the window as a whole pans out before giving them a grade. As much as I do, I am relatively positive about the Gyokeres deal.
Graham, I think one thing that would be interesting to me is to see how Arsenal play that left wing depth option, because maybe it is they're going to try to kind of experiment with Madueke. I still can't say his last name correctly. I think I apologize, but maybe they're going to try to play him in that spot. Maybe they're going to try other players there. But there was an Athletic piece specifically about Manchester United where they were talking about how like left wing is essentially a position that right now has a ton of global depth and global strength, and so you're not really going to be able to get a ton of value if you were trying to sell a left winger. And with so much depth out there, I wonder if Arsenal could maybe hold off, see what they have left over, and then try to go for that one final deal that does give them strength. Maybe doesn't move the needle so much, but I kind of feel like that's not a needle that needs to be moved all that much to make them that much better.
Yeah. I think there's a clear. Frankly, I think there's a clear need on the left side as well, just because of the Martinelli inconsistency in that part of the field. But man, if Arsenal walk out of this window with the strengthening that they've done in midfield, a little bit of strengthening a little bit deeper down the field as well, and with Madueke, who, by the way, Madueke might just be one of my favorite players on the planet. Do you guys remember that Wolves bit? Ryan, were you going to get to this?
I was going to come in and say, why would Chelsea want to sell him? Because I love him so much.
It's so awesome. So before the game that Chelsea had against Wolves, that was this past season or was that the season before? Now time's a flat circle. He posts on Instagram just trashing the city of Wolverhampton.
Oh, yeah.
And then comes out and scores, I think he scored a hat-trick in the game against Wolves, and celebrates just I was right. What do you want me to say? I'm not going to apologize. I think he deleted the post. But it's a great bit. And ever since then, Noni Madueke has been one of my favorite players. I think he's also a fantastic depth option on that right side. If Arsenal get the left winger, and Rodrigo would be a really, really fun name. And then on Gyokeres for just a minute, because we haven't really talked about him a whole lot, and that feels like the most concrete, kind of next step for Arsenal, even though there's some transfer back and forth right now with the Sporting. He's such a fun player. Right? And I choose the word fun, I think, carefully there, because I'm not 100% convinced that he's going to be a smash hit for Arsenal, but boy, does he like to smash defenders. He is like a flat track bully. up top, and we saw this in the Champions League against Arsenal and other teams. We saw this in the Portuguese top flight. He physically overpowers defenders, and that is, I think, the primary reason why he's racked up so many goals over the last 2 seasons in Portugal. It is not that he is incapable of a bit of finesse, but his game is predicated on strength and on bulldozing you. That is a lot harder to do in the Premier League than it is to do in Portugal, right? And I think we saw some of that difference in the Champions League, where all of a sudden Sporting are playing a different type of game. He's playing a different type of game. He's up against better defenders. Life is not so easy. I still think he's going to be a good player for Arsenal if they get this deal over the line. I think he does solve some problems for them. He gives them a different profile in that 9 spot. And I do think that's a need, if not the biggest need for this team, because I agree with Graham on the left wing at this stage. But I do think he's an interesting player because it's not as if he is this perfectly well-rounded, he just has to scale to the next level kind of player. If he was, he would already be there, right? So there is something different for a player at his age profile that we have to actually see. And I have to see to kind of believe that he's going to be a 20-goal-a-season guy in England. He doesn't have to be for this to be a good deal for Arsenal. But he's a fascinating, not quite one-dimensional player, but a player with such a clearly defined strength that literally is strength. Who also scored 0-headed goals last year, by the way, in the league, which is kind of a fun little wrinkle there to his game. So I'm just curious, and I hope this deal happens because I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah, I think Arsenal, with their search for a number 9, Ryan, you led us in with the saga around Gyokeres. I don't think there was a saga around Gyokeres. I think there was a saga around the number 9 for Arsenal, where initially it was Isak was their dream option. Then it was Benjamin Sesko. Remember that? Coming into the summer, that seemed to be the player that was ahead of at the top of the pecking order, and then they've eventually landed on Gyokeres. And between those 2 strikers, they ended up with 2 imperfect options. And there was a good Opt article on this that compares the 2. Now, Sesko is a better all-rounder. He's a giant. He's lightning quick. He's good on the ball. He can take the ball at the feet. He can get in behind the defences. He scores goals from all sorts of situations. The thing is, his conversion rate is not great, and even his underlying numbers in terms of things like shots per 90 and XG per 90 are not great. He was ranked 29th and 30th in Europe last season. So you're making a projection that he can scale that up to a better league as well. He will be in a better team, of course, which will help, but he's going into a stronger league, which was maybe the concern with Benjamin Sesko. The concern with Gyokeres is, I think there's a sense that he does his best work when he has open space to attack. And you might say, well, okay, but he played for Sporting, who were this dominant team in the Portuguese league last season, which is correct. He scored 4 goals against the teams in the top half of the Portuguese league last season. He scored 58 in all competitions. 4 of them were against the top half teams in Portugal. Not great. 12 of them were penalties. So that concerns me a bit with Gyokeres, and Joe's absolutely right. He doesn't need to score, I think it was 54 goals actually, not 58, but he doesn't need to score 54 goals in a season for Arsenal to be a success. If he gets close to 20, then I think he's probably a success for Arsenal. But those are things with Gyokeres that make this feel like Sesko was the more like quintessential Arsenal signing, and they've deviated from the norm here to go and get Gyokeres in the hope that he's the player that can help them win now.
Can we cross North London to have a chat about Tottenham then? Because obviously they've been doing some very good business, it appears, as well. Graham obviously got a coach that the fans can be very excited about. Mohamed Kudus in, Mattis Tell in, Kevin Danso from Lyon in as well, and maybe Gibbs White on his way as well. It seems like there's a lot to be positive about at, I was going to call it White Hart Lane. I don't know what you call that stadium anymore. Tottenham? I don't know.
I think they're selling the rights to some Saudi company, I think, for the start of the new season. So
Great.
have a great new name. Yeah. The Aramco Arena or something like that.
Riyadh Airways Arena feels like
we're
going to get.
Yeah. Great stuff. Plenty to be positive about for Spurs besides that naming rights deal. Danso and Tell, yes, that's factually correct that they have been signed this summer. They were on loan from January. Those deals have been made permanent this summer. But Kudus, £55 million from West Ham. I think he's a great player, Kudus. There were glimpses of the player that we saw for Ajax at West Ham, but West Ham I almost discount anything that happens to a player at West Ham because they're just like this chaos club where nothing ever good happens. Everyone struggles for consistency. Kudus also had some injuries which didn't help him. But I think he could be a really good fit for Spurs, who until now didn't have anyone to hold the ball on the right side of the attack. They had they've got Brennan Johnson, who actually had an incredible goal-scoring season for them in that position last year. But he's someone who wants to arrive late in the box. He's not really a dribbler or a creator. And the fact of the matter is that last season, Kudus only Jeremy Doku completed more dribbles than him in the Premier League last season. He also attempted more than double the number of dribbles of any Spurs player last season. I think Kulusevski was on 98 and Kudus was up close to 200. So that's a big part of why he has been signed. And then the Gibbs-White deal, which a week ago looked like a done deal because Spurs had somehow found out about a £60 million release clause in his contract. They had activated it. Nottingham Forest are unhappy that they found out about this, have accused them of finding out about it by illegal means and are going to sue them or something. I have now seen a report that Spurs are going to pay them £5 million extra as a sort of like peace offering, and that's essentially like the fine, so that this doesn't get dragged out and essentially he can sign in the next couple of weeks. But I'm a big fan of Morgan Gibbs-White and have been for a couple seasons now. He has been Forest's most creative player in the last 2 seasons. He was their second top scorer after Chris Wood as well last season. He is really good at moving the ball forward at speed. Only Mohamed Salah and Son Heung-min had more assist-ending carries, according to Opta, than Gibbs-White last season. So given the way we know Thomas Frank likes his teams to play in the attack, I reckon Gibbs-White and Kudus, they really fit into that. And they're also just like quality players. I know that's fairly reductive, but they are players who I think will significantly improve Tottenham's attack this season.
What's the point of putting in a release clause and then making it
That's
a
what I
double
was
secret
gonna
release
ask.
clause? Is it just because the player said I want one, and so they were like, sure, but we'll write it in size 4 font and we'll put it at the very end, and we'll make sure no one sees it?
I'd never heard of this before. And maybe this is more common, but reading about this transfer, I had the exact same questions that you have, Taylor. I did not know this was the thing. Why it accomplishes nothing if it's a secret? You just want everybody to guess? We're going to play 20 questions. You have 20 guesses to guess the exact release clause. If you don't get it, you can't have him. Like, what is happening?
Is this not a reminder that contracts are actually private agreements between the player and the organisation, and the information we get when we do learn about release clauses and details of contracts, it's the stuff they want us to know, rather than
that's reported. Like my question would be, well, where would it be like listed? I get your confusion, Joe. It seems a bit silly, but like, there's not a football Craigslist that you can list all the release clauses on.
I mean, it basically, in my mind, it means that, like, to your point, Ryan, yes, it is a private agreement between the player and the club. If the club are trying to keep it secret and hidden, I think it's reading between the lines. It's pretty clear what they're saying is that there was probably some level of tapping up. Either the agent maybe made that release clause known, or the player himself. That seems less likely to me. But it probably speaks to that sort of like, we know everyone is breaking the rules, and there's tapping up going on all over the place. And if you want to make a stick about it, you probably can, because you are technically legally correct. At the same time, it feels like a thing that everybody does, and this does feel like Nottingham Forest maybe just getting caught and not really being pleased about it and making a stink accordingly. It still feels like a move that will end up happening, because it's a bad look for them if it doesn't, basically. Like, maybe that's an oversimplification, but I think if you have the aspirations that Nottingham Forest do, and you've spent the amount of money they have, I don't think you continue to kind of be a destination club or a place where players want to go for anything other than money if you are making it really difficult for players to move when a team has met the clause that allows that player to move.
At the same time, I'm not sure the guy who stormed the pitch at the end of the season to argue with his own manager cares about looking bad. Marinakis. Also, Nottingham Forest, the club that reported Crystal Palace to UEFA and then got demoted to the Conference League. So, making friends everywhere they go, Nottingham Forest.
Wonderful. Graham, can I make a case for Tottenham being the Premier League team with the most potential upswing in this coming season? Given
they better be.
Well, they can't have any downswing. They can't afford that, obviously. But they have the most upside, given the business they've done, given the new outlook they've got. Is there anyone else who could have a greater upswing than them? I'm not sure.
Not on the basis of the business that they've done. I mean, the other obvious suggestion would be Manchester United, who were down there with Spurs, but as we'll come to, I don't feel as great about the business that they've done. And also, the weird thing about Spurs is you look through their squads, and I actually think their squad's okay. Like, there's a good number of players. I think I made this point at the end of last season. There's a good number of players there that I highly rate. Like Mickey Van de Ven, I think, is brilliant. Christian Mero on his day is a top-level defender. Solanke, when he's fit, I think he was a good signing last summer. Brennan Johnson came close. I think he scored like 19 goals, came close to 20 goals last season. So, yeah, there's talent in that Tottenham squad, and Kudus and Gibbs-White are both quality. So I think they should very much be hoping for sort of like a top 8 finish this season, which would be a vast improvement.
It definitely would. All right, let's take one more quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about Man United and any other businesses going on out there in transfer world. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our transfer update. Hey, Taylor, Man United time. Ding, ding, ding. Here we go. And Mbeumo? This is the saga, right? So I maybe I mislabeled Gyokeres as the saga, but this one seems to be held up still unless that one has gone through as we record. I think on Wednesday there was a price of 70 million, and now maybe Man United want to pay that 70 million. We're doing a little dance here, aren't we? And we seem to be in the closing stages.
And I mean, credit to Brentford for doing that dance really successfully and really well. And I'm excited for their next ask of like 71 million. Like they seem like they can just keep doing that. It has been a saga. To Joe's point, I feel like we escaped it. We didn't have to talk about Manchester United. I like
we
the
still
business
don't,
they were
technically
doing.
speaking. Like we could make a collective choice as a group just to ignore. I don't know. Just throwing that out there.
I think it's worth providing the update that will annoy supporters but make neutrals slightly interested, which is just that things remain not great at the club, in my opinion. The Mateus Cunha signing, they trigger the release clause for 62.5 million.
How did they find out about that, by the way?
What's that?
How did they find out about that release clause?
It's an interesting one, right? Yeah. Interesting. It wasn't a double secret, like you had to have Magic Ink to be able to see it, contract clause. So that's why. It was just a standard one. But yeah, they trigger that one, which in the moment feels like, oh, they're getting business done early. This is very exciting. What I think it actually does, and I'm not breaking new ground with this one, is basically gives every other club a price point to then, if you're going to have to negotiate, if you're going to have to then like go back and forth, you're not going to accept anything less than a release clause that was paid for a player who arguably isn't as good or hasn't been as successful. So when it's time for Mbeumo, they're never going to agree to the initial 45 million, I think, and that's an initial position for Manchester United. But that number keeps going up because I think Brentford recognize you are sort of in prolonged talks with us at this point. He is even if it's the one season that is the kind of sample size, he's a proven Premier League goal scorer at that point. So you're going to walk away now and go try to find somebody else who won't be as good and isn't as reliable and doesn't have that pedigree. I think they kind of recognize Manchester United can't do that. I think Manchester United recognize they can't do that. And so it ends in this prolonged kind of stalemate where I think ultimately Man United will end up paying whatever Brentford want. But in the meantime, they've lost a lot of momentum. They've lost a lot of, I think, positivity that had been built. And critically, they haven't sold any of the players that they needed to sell. Amorim made a point, reportedly at least, of saying to ownership and to the decision makers that he wanted decisions made for Rashford, Sancho, Garnacho, and Antony, and Tyrell Malacia, who does not feel like he fits into that group, but here we are. He wanted them sort of sorted out and sold before preseason began. That has obviously not happened, hence why they are now asking those players to show up at 5 p.m. for training when everyone else has already left, because I think they're legally obligated to give them access to medical facilities and physios and the like, otherwise they're in breach of contract. But it's a really negative situation, once again, in which the club are trying to kind of deal with past mistakes and poor decision-making, while at the same time it feels like doing a lot of the same decision-making them they got here in the first place.
Yeah, first of all, a lot of contract and litigation talk on today's show. It's juicy stuff, and I'm glad we're into it. Breach of contracts are exciting, right? Second of all, Manchester United are in a really tough spot, right? Like it's fun to make fun of them, which I think is part of the reason why they do come up so often on this show. And Taylor's misery cycle that he's trapped in as well helps with that. But we have to recognize that this is not an easy process, right, for Manchester United to turn over a big chunk of this squad. Those 5 players you mentioned, Taylor, I've read in reporting from the BBC that they're being referred to as the bomb squad, which is supposed to be something that sounds cool and helpful, and I guess is a Britishism for like they've been bombed out, like they're...
Oh, they've been a bomb would be like, if you bomb, you flop, yeah.
But I think to Joe's point, like, that's not good.
Yeah, no,
not
certainly.
Yeah,
There was some terminology confusion there. That actually, Graham cleared that up well. But the issue is, even if Ruben Amorim and the reporting out there about him not having those players come and train with the team, even if that wasn't out there, everybody on the planet knows that those players are not in the plans for Manchester United. Like, it's a bit silly and it's funny that they're the bomb squad and they're isolated and, it's juicy stuff. But everybody already knew that, right? Everybody already knew that those players are on the outs in Manchester United. And so all of this is going to take forever to happen because there's no reason for anybody to go and rush to the table with Manchester United and say, hey, we're going to give you exactly what you want from Marcus Rashford. Why would you do that? Why not wait a month, wait till you get closer to the end of the window, unless you're desperate for a player? So maybe one or two of these guys go and move on. They find a perfect home. Even then, Manchester United are not going to get, they're going to get pennies on the dollar for some of these players. But this is going to take forever because nobody is in a rush, because they have all the leverage and Manchester United have none of it. So this is not this was never going to be a one window, wow, Manchester United look really good and cohesive and competent, and all this makes perfect sense. This is a years-long process that we are seeing start now. Their negotiating position is not good whatsoever, and it's going to take window after window for Manchester United to be the team that, Taylor, I know that you want them to be. That's just not in the cards for this summer.
Yeah, the most baffling thing about Manchester United is every season or every 18 months they change out the front office staff at that club and they continually just make the same mistakes over and over again. I mean, the Garnacho one in particular, Amorim telling Garnacho in a public team meeting, or not a public team meeting, but an all-hands team meeting at the end of last season that he's defined a new club. That probably has cost Manchester United between 10 and 20 million euros on that 20 million euros on that deal, because they could have sold him in January to Chelsea for 70 million, was apparently what Chelsea were willing to pay for him at that time. They'll get nowhere near that for Garnacho. And that one, to your point, Joe, why would anyone come in with an offer for that right now? That one's going to stretch right until the end of the window. I think the Rashford one is going to stretch until the end of the window as well. Barcelona does seem to, I've scoffed at that notion before, but that's when I thought Nico Williams was a dead cert for Barcelona. That's not happening now, so it seems like that is a possibility. But that seems like it'll probably be a loan if that gets done. So even then, Manchester United are not going to get all of his wages off the books. They're not going to get a transfer fee for him. Sancho seems to be the furthest along. It was reported in Italy on Wednesday that Juve are in advanced talks with both him and Manchester United. But again, that could be a loan. In that same reporting, it said it's a loan with an option to buy rather than a permanent deal. And in Højlund, Inter Milan were interested, but they seem to have cooled their interest now that they've signed Boni from Parma. Also, Esposito, who played at the Club World Cup, looks pretty good as well. So getting him off the books is going to be difficult. And this is the cork in the bottle of Manchester United summer, because right there you have players that I think are earning like £3 million a week or something. Marcus Rashford accounts for about £500,000 of that on his own. Maybe it's £2 million a week, but it's a lot of money that Man United are leaving on the table with having the bomb squad training on their own at 5 p.m.
Yeah, and I think, not in their defense, but to give like a little more clarity, I think what the expectation was from Manchester United decision makers is Rashford's going to go on loan. Like, it feels initially like he's going to hit and it's going to go well, and then that's going to be a buy clause activated. 40 million comes in. I think there was an expectation that Sancho would once again find a way to find form on loan, look sharp. 25 million, splash in the bucket for Chelsea. That gets done. Now you're at 65. Antony, I think they valued around 30. They probably take 20 or 25 maybe to get him off the books. Now that number's going up, and then you sell Garnacho on top of that for, 40 at that point? Like, I think there was this idea that we're going to make over £100 million this summer, and we're going to have that much more flexibility to play with. Some of that felt, I think, built into them, which is a mistake right away, because anyone who's watched Marcus Rashford or Jadon Sancho knows that it's a 50-50 coin flip at best there. And so... But I think that was a huge part of their planning, a huge part of their budgeting, and so now they haven't sold those players, and I think they are, if the Mbeumo one gets across the line, I think they're right back to we have to sell to buy, and they find themselves in that same position. No, they don't have leverage, so it's either, you're basically loaning them out, or you're hoping to sell them for very, very, very little, but at least get the wages off the books. But then those players have to agree to take reduced wages and make those moves happen, and it just doesn't feel like that's going to be the case. It feels like what's going to happen is clubs are going to wait to the last minute, as Joe and Graham have already said, and then offer loans in which Manchester United covers a significant amount of the salary, and it's basically whoever can get the best terms for that agreement ends up with at least a couple of these players.
But on the bright side, Taylor, there might be some more canteen staff or some secretaries who've been at the club for 40 years they could fire as well to sort of alleviate things a little bit. Yeah.
And I mean, that's the stuff that, like, when things are bad, that's going to get reported and leaked. And I truly think that's the type of thing that probably happens when new ownership comes in and they're evaluating where there is waste and where they can kind of tighten things up, and at the very least send the message that, like, we don't need 6 people doing the job of 3. But when everything else is going wrong and you have done this to yourselves with, like, ownership adding debt to the club and then ownership making bad decisions, it's just more bad optics, and that's what it keeps being. It's just an easy horse to go back to. It's an easy trough to revisit, and that's a thing that I think you read a lot of articles. That's what a lot of the comments are about. Is like, cool, the same old points about how we're terrible and we're bad and we make bad decisions. And that's a fair complaint to have with the way the club is discussed and covered. But at the same time, when you keep doing it and you keep putting yourself in that position, it is what it is. So I don't think things get rosier for Manchester United this season. I think maybe Amorim has more buy-in from most of the squad, and I think you probably will get some younger players getting opportunities because they won't be able to spend that much money. So I think it will be a better finish, like in terms of the table. I don't know how much better it will be on the pitch or when it comes to the transfer market.
I think, Graham, the way I see Man United is I don't see how they break out of this cycle they're in that they've been in for a very long time. And they overpay for players and they get stuck with them, and they just don't have the philosophical change that they need to action a different plan at Manchester United. And the players you mentioned, Garnacho, Rashford, Sancho, no club's really going to buy them. They're all going to be loans, aren't they? They're all going to be loans where Man United end up still paying half their wages. And how does that cycle change? There needs to be a fundamental change at the very top, doesn't there?
Yep, and that's where maybe not paying what Brentford ask for Mbeumo is the long-term right thing to do. And there was actually, I can't remember what summer it was, Taylor, you might be able to remember, but there was a summer like maybe 3 years ago at this point where Manchester United did take a harder line in the transfer market and they didn't pay what clubs wanted. And at that point I thought, okay, they've reset like a little bit. And then they completely abandoned that over the next 2 years, and they paid, 80 million for Anthony, 8 million plus for Anthony after Ajax asked for 50 million a month earlier. They're in a vicious cycle. I think the positive point is Cunha is an improvement on what they have. I mean, it's not Manchester United fans' money if you take that out of the equation, because I think they have wildly overpaid for Cunha. Like, he's a good player. I think he will improve them, and I think if they were to get Mbeumo, I really like Brian Mbeumo, so I can't wait to see how they ruin him as well. But at this moment in time, he's a really good player that I fancy quite a bit.
That is a shame. All right, that's pretty much it for our transfer update, unless we have any other deals we want to talk about. Graham, how about Jordan Henderson in his quest to play for more teams in red and white?
He's back.
Landing at Brentford.
That's so true.
Hendo, he's back. He has signed for Brentford after being released by Ajax at the end of last season. And yeah, I'm officially worried for Brentford. Their best players are leaving.
Move, is it?
No, it's not at all. Their best players are leaving. Let's just say Mbeumo goes to Manchester United. Wissa goes somewhere. They've already sold. Who's the other one that they've sold? I'm blanking on right now. But they've their best players are leaving. Their manager is gone. They've replaced him with a rookie in Keith Andrews. Don't think their fans are particularly happy about that. So this is the biggest test of their model so far, Brentford's model. And we had a listener question, not to give myself too much credit, and they haven't been relegated yet, so I can't even give myself credit. They could finish in the top half this season, but we got a listener question midway through last season of like which of the established teams are most likely to have a nosedive, and I did suggest Brentford just because their model means they have to continually punch above their weight, and they're going to have to do that more than ever, I think, this season.
Counterpoint. They're the ones who first signed Christian Eriksen, right? When he's returning.
That's where my head went as well.
So
Eriksen 29 when he signs, though. I just looked it up.
Yeah.
Little bit of a difference there, but I was thinking the
Henderson.
same.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's more than just the age when you bring back Christian Eriksen at that point.
Oh, for sure.
So I think there is something to be said for, like, you bring in Premier League experience, a Premier League veteran, you give just a little bit more steel to that team. It might not be like the most exciting of signings, but I think it's a signing that could end up being smart, even if he doesn't play a ton of minutes.
Yeah, it feels like an experience play for Brentford. Like, let's get somebody in here who knows the league. We've been hemorrhaging our veteran, experienced top players, as Graham's already talked about. You ran through the list well, Graham, and it's going to be a difficult season for Brentford, but I think bringing in Henderson actually does kind of make sense in this veteran vacuum that they've experienced this summer. But obviously he's not like a game changer at 35. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think he's been brought in to be a leader because the player that I was blanking on who's left is Christian Norgard, who was the club captain. The thing is, though, I think Christian Norgard's a lot better than Jordan Henderson, so that's a downgrade.
Well, that's why one of them went to Arsenal, one of them went to Brentford, as it turns out.
But they brought in Anthony Milambo from Feyenoord for 20 million euros, so give him 6 months, and then Manchester United or Arsenal will come in with a 70 million pound bid, and they're good to go.
That's
it. You get it.
That's it. That's the plan. That is the plan indeed. And that is, I believe, our transfer roundup concluded, unless anyone wants to shout a name at me. No,
Luis
no
Diaz.
shouting.
Bayern want Luis
there it is,
Diaz.
Luis Diaz. So Bayern Munich had an offer rejected for Diaz. Is that where we're at, Joe?
Yep. And reportedly they bid £59 million for him. That bid was rejected. It's going to take more than that for Liverpool to accept that deal, as I think it should, because Luis Diaz is one of the best wide players on the planet. Also, the reporting from David Ornstein is that Lucho Diaz wants to leave, and it's not really super clear why that is the case. Obviously, I would imagine there's a wage disparity here between what Bayern are offering and what Liverpool are willing to pay. So that's something to keep your eyes on, because Luis Diaz, like I said, is an amazing, amazing wide player who has been really important to Liverpool. So maybe some reshuffling there happening depending on if this move goes through.
And Bayern are going to get someone this summer. They've kind of been all over the place in terms of the players that they've targeted. Obviously, Florian Wirtz initially. They're now targeting Luis Diaz, but they also want, is it Voltemade, the Stuttgart? That's probably not how you pronounce that, but the Stuttgart Peter Crouch, who was brilliant at the U21 Euros and scored like 6 goals for Germany. They want him. Apparently they want Javi Simon. They apparently want Leandro Trossard. They missed out on Nico Williams. All of these players are completely different to one another. So I think Bayern, they're all over the place, but they're gonna get one of these big names, I would imagine, in this window.
Every now and then there is the Bayern mistake, right? Where they just like, we gotta get somebody, 90 million for this guy. Yes, exactly. I'm excited to see if this is another one of those summers. And I will just add, Marcus Rashford is available, Bayern, and he would love maybe to play there. I don't know. He hasn't had his agents leak that the club is interested in him, so we don't know for sure yet.
I'm not sure he'd love to play anywhere, to be honest, but
he likes his current situation. Who wouldn't?
Yeah, exactly.
Bomb squad.
Doesn't have to get out till 4 p.m. What a luxury.
My closing note on this will be a really great line from Oliver Kay that summarizes the situation for Manchester United. What does it say about United's failures of recruitment and player development in recent years that they find themselves trying to sell 3 left wingers at once? Good stuff. Good stuff, Manchester United.
Wonderful stuff indeed, and a good place to end this here transfer update. Taylor Rockwell, thank you very much for your insights. We appreciate you.
Meh.
Graham Ruthven, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan Bailey.
And Joe, a pleasure as always. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan.
Listener, thank you very much for joining us on this transfer update. You want to talk about more transfers? Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. We'll have a chat with you in our Discord. But for now, on this feed, bye.